This is episode 16 of the One Idea podcast, how to get customers to trust your brand. This podcast is produced by Evolve and Adapt, an award-winning strategy and digital consulting firm based in Singapore and Malaysia. If you're looking to build your brand and generate massive leads and revenue, book a marketing consulting call at evolveadapt.com. Dear citizens, my name is JC Sum. I'm a certified marketing management consultant and the author of Evolve, Adapt or Collapse. One of our clients is a reseller of luxury goods. Let's say they sell luxury watches. These are well-known brands such as Rolex, Omega, Cartier, and IWC. You get the idea. They came to us because they wanted to increase their sales. For a small business, they were doing quite well with healthy sales and revenue. However, they wanted to grow their business in the competitive market they are in. They felt some of their competitors were doing better than them, even though they are basically selling the same brands. As usual, when we take on a project, we start with research and data gathering. This includes primary and secondary research of qualitative and quantitative data. After we gather the data, we move to strategic analysis, which then allows us to plan and make recommendations as well as formulate a marketing framework and plan for the client. One of the key things we identified for this client was the issue of trust and credibility for the client's brand. There was no issue of the brands of the products sold, but the client's own brand as a reseller was not strong outside their customer base. As an online reseller, the client does not have a physical retail shopfront, so people cannot come down to see the watches or engage in a discussion. Everything is done online. One advantage of being an online business is lower overheads such as rent. As such, they can pass their savings onto their customers. However, herein lies one of the issues. Imagine seeing an online posting, whether it is a product description on an e-commerce site, a social media post, or an online ad. Imagine that there's a branded watch for sale, but selling for a much lower price than retail price or on the secondary markets. Generally, in this part of the world, and I'm talking about Southeast Asia, although I believe it will apply to most places, the thought that goes through a consumer's mind is not, wow, that is a great deal, I will buy it right now. The thought is actually the opposite. Consumers will think, why is this watch going for such a cheap price? Is it a fake? Is it damaged? Is it stolen? Or is it just a scam? Meaning there's no watch at all. And if they click on the posting and look at the seller and do not recognize the name, they will get a bit suspicious. They will then do some investigative work to research the seller. In the client's case, the online presence of the business was only strong on 2 social media sites. They had a website, but it looked amateurish and badly designed. It was also not updated for a long time. There was no other information on the business except for the 2 social media channels, and one of them was a private group. We realized that a big issue for the client was the lack of credibility of the reseller's brand, which resulted in a lack of trust. This meant people might be attracted by the online posting of the products but were not converting. That is, they were not buying. So a big part of the project was a rebranding exercise to build trust and credibility in the brand. Long story short, we implemented a long series of recommendations and the results were very positive. Trust is especially important in luxury goods because of the prevalence of fakes and scams. However, having a business brand that customers trust is essential for any business, even if you're selling very low-ticket items. Just think of your own customer journey on online marketplaces for inexpensive items. When you go on Amazon, AliExpress, Taobao, or Shopee, generally there are multiple sellers of the same products. Yet, you still choose a seller who you think is more trustworthy. You may look at ratings, reviews, number of sales, and the location of the seller. You take all these into consideration even though the item is only $1. That is how important trust and credibility is. And it does not matter if you have a B2C or B2B business. So how does a business build trust and credibility for their brand? There are several key ways to build the trust. But before I go through the main strategies, I'd like you to think about the basic customer journey or sales funnel. There are 4 stages of the basic customer journey: awareness, consideration, purchase, and advocacy. Awareness is how customers are exposed to your brand, product, or service. Consideration is where customers are deciding whether your product or service fits their needs. Purchase is when customers buy your product or service. Advocacy is when customers become loyal customers and brand evangelists. When thinking about building trust in your brand, think of it within the framework of this customer journey. This will give you a much clearer picture of how you should approach your trust building and which stage of the customer journey it is currently most lacking for your own business. So I will share what I consider the top 4 strategies for building trust. The first strategy is to have a good product or service. Now, I did not say you have to have the best product, as that is not always possible, but you cannot have a bad product. You must have a good enough product that customers or a majority of customers are happy with. This, of course, is much easier said than done. Purchase decisions are often made based on emotion instead of logic. Your challenge is to be sure your product is of impressive quality so as to justify their purchase. No matter how good your marketing hype is, if the product is not of good quality, it will draw negative reviews. This leads to distrust and decreased credibility. This episode is not about how to build a good product, so for the sake of discussion, we will assume you have a good product or service to offer the market. Assuming you have a good product, the second strategy to building trust is to establish brand authority. This, to me, is fundamental and the most important thing after having a good product. If you do not have authority, you will not have credibility and you will not have the trust of your customers. Here are a few ways to build and establish authority that all brands must practice. First, brand identity and messaging. According to a study by Morning Consult, these were the most trusted brands in the world in 2021, starting at the top: Google, PayPal, Microsoft, YouTube, Amazon, Sony, Adidas, Netflix, Visa, and Samsung. I'm sure you have heard of every one of these brands. Granted, they're all B2C businesses, which is to be expected. 3 things that these brands have in common is that they offer a good product or service, have a clear brand identity, and have clear brand messaging. Establishing your brand identity does not just make your product more memorable, it makes your brand more authoritative in its market. The brand that establishes a face and maintains that face consistently over time develops credibility against its competitors and trust among its customers. Brand identity includes visual logos, products, marketing copy, values, and all marketing communication that is consistent across all channels, offline and online. How consistent and memorable is your brand identity? Brand messaging refers to how you communicate your brand identity, including your product offerings and brand values. Here are some examples of brand messages for the top brands mentioned earlier. Amazon was launched as a book-selling website initially. The slogan of Amazon at that time was Earth's biggest bookstore. It signified everything that Amazon was striving to be and was a clear message to customers. Netflix brand message is See What's Next, a succinct tagline that encapsulates Netflix's mission and disposition. It also speaks to Netflix's maverick pioneering spirit. Connecting people to stories is Netflix's core objective, and anticipation is at the heart of storytelling. One of PayPal's early brand messages was the safer, easier way to pay. It was a clear way of telling people what they do and why people should use them. What is your brand message? Can you clearly communicate your brand message in a single phrase or sentence? Check out episode 7 of One Idea on how to brand an idea in one sentence to sell it for more info on how to create clear brand messaging. One important aspect of your brand message is authenticity. Your message must be authentic and true to be credible. That means recognizing and being open about your product's strengths and weaknesses. Don't overclaim or oversell your product. When people come to your site, this information should be found easily on the first page. The key is to be honest and not list fake information. You don't want fake news. If your brand isn't right for a potential customer, guide them to a brand that is a better fit. This shows you care about the customer and their needs, not just about making a sale. This builds credibility and ensures they'll come back when the time is right. The second strategy to build and establish authority, especially in today's world, is to have good online presence. This essentially means customers must be able to find comprehensive information on your brand online easily. It starts with a professional website that is clear, concise, but communicates everything about your company, business, and products. Next, the same branding and messaging must be replicated on all your social channels. The more information you put out there, the stronger your core online presence will be. If you want people to talk about your brand, you need to start the conversation by building your own online presence. Once you have established your website and social channels, you need to engage with your customers. This creates interaction and builds trust over time. One recent example is Golden Screen Cinemas, or GSC, a cinema chain in Malaysia. GSC managed to keep their customers engaged through social media during the pandemic lockdown in 2020 when all their cinemas were closed. They resonated with the customers' feelings as one of them, who were also affected by the lockdown, through jokes and memes. Their iconic "hello, cannot," and it must be pronounced in that way, went viral, and they even started selling merchandise with the social distancing and MCO lockdown theme. After creating your brand identity and messaging and core online presence, the third strategy is to establish authority. This is done through a combination of marketing efforts. The first is to create content. Create content in the form of social posts, blog posts, articles, white papers, images, videos, or podcasts. Creating content is an ongoing marketing effort and not one-off. Consistency and quality are the keys. Do your homework. Sharing content without really understanding the subject comes across as disingenuous. Make sure you know what you're sharing so that when you share it, you do so thoughtfully and purposefully. Be sure not to be too sales-oriented. Use promotion-free content marketing to increase customer trust in your brand. Consumers want reliable information before making any purchase decisions. Know where prospects are in your sales funnel. Remember, we talked about awareness, consideration, purchase, and advocacy. That way, you can engage them with relevant content that meets them when they're at that particular stage of the customer journey. It may be a slower process, but over time, the trust is established and it grows. Social proof is another way to build authority. People want to know who you are, not just from you. So customer testimonials, reviews, references, or praise from others are all ways to put credibility behind your brand. One final way to build authority is to engage with the community of thought leaders or key opinion leaders, also known as KOLs. As you build an online presence, focus on sharing and commenting on content from your industry's thought leaders. As you engage through social media, you're showing you understand and value those around you who know what they're talking about. Drawing from their expertise and knowledge in turn demonstrates you are a credible source. Finally, the last strategy to build trust and credibility in your brand is through customer service, by being available and easily accessible to your customers. In today's digital age and globally connected world, customers can and expect to directly interact with you. You lessen your credibility anytime a customer has a question and they cannot get an answer in a timely manner. To support the accessibility for your customers, you should set up a full-feature customer support infrastructure. Use help desk software, social media messaging, attend conferences and events, and seek to answer questions promptly and personally. This increases your likability and provides support to your customers. That support provides the basis for building the trust and credibility that we've been discussing. Likewise, if there's a breach of trust or credibility, Like a data breach or a faulty product, you must address it immediately and rectify the situation as best as possible. It is possible to recover if you've created adequate consumer goodwill, demonstrated a willingness to fix any problem, and build a solid belief in your product and customer service. When necessary, apologize and acknowledge where the brand went wrong, as well as fully articulate what efforts you are making to rebuild your customers' trust. One good example happened a few years ago in Singapore when a dead lizard was found in a packet of Irving's salted eggfish skin snacks. Getting attention on the internet due to complaints of unhygienic food products could be a disaster to the entire business. Irving Singapore handled it well by apologizing publicly and owning up to the issue. They carried out an investigation immediately, besides offering refunds for customers who were not comfortable with consuming the snacks they bought. This unfortunate incident was turned into good publicity, thanks to a good PR response and customer service that won customers over. The one idea of this episode is to build trust and credibility in your brand. You can do so with 4 strategies. Number 1, offer a good product or service. Number 2, have a clear brand identity and messaging. Number 3, establish authority in your field. And finally, number 4, provide good customer service. Apply these 4 strategies within the framework of the customer journey of awareness, consideration, purchase, and advocacy, and you will have legions of new and loyal customers coming back for you. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the One Idea podcast. Catch every episode by subscribing to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or on your favorite podcast app. Just search for One Idea. ONEEYEDEER. As you know, a podcast needs listeners' reviews to grow, so please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. This ensures we can keep this podcast free forever. Check the show notes for details. If you'd like to learn more about the podcast, myself, or our consulting firm, head over to oneideapodcast.com. My name is JC Sum, and this has been One Idea.